Ever wondered how a song with seemingly less can actually feel like more? And what if the secret to a truly impactful song isn't more instruments or more layers of production, but instead a signature sound? My name's Joseph Hardy, and I've just released my first single. It's called Talk is Cheap, and I just wanted to dismantle some of the intricate layers that shaped its understated power and also hopefully untangle some of the deliberate choices that went into the making of my song. So I was inspired by the intimate feel of a lot of 60s pop songs, specifically early pop songs from this period. And this could be the Beatles, the Stones. I also heavily liked Bob Dylan, and a big inspiration for me was that early to mid period. His self titled album, Freewheeling, another side of Bob Dylan. Basically, up until he went electric, that's where I was honing the inspiration for. And also, a big inspiration was the song Hey, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away by the Beatles. So, listening to this specific song made me realize just how effective simple chord progressions could be, and calculating strumming can really create immense depth. This particular song was John Lennon's tribute to Lonnie Donegan, who was considered the king of skiffle in the 50s, specifically in England. But John Lennon, Paul McCartney, growing up in Liverpool, would have heard this, and come 60s, they were heavily using this influence, particularly in the Help album. Paul uses the song, uses it on the song, sorry, I've Just Seen a Face. And obviously, John uses it on Hey, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. But of course, as we know, the Beatles were heavily inspired by Bob Dylan. I'm sure songs like A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, obviously Blowing in the Wind, and I've also heard George Harrison interviews where he's talked about the song It's Alright Ma, I'm Only Bleeding, and explained just how astounded he was not only with Bob Dylan's wordplay, but also the hypnotic nature of the song. And I think this was done so perfectly through the simple chord progression and the whether it's called an ostinato or whether it's like a drone effect, just the repetitive pattern which really kind of leaves the listener in a trance. So that being said, I was listening to a lot of these early to mid 60s pop songs, and I wanted to see if I could try and put this in a modern context. And this made me listen to Hosier. He had a huge song last year called Too Sweet. He says that this was done through a mix of simple organic rhythm playing with modern punchy and chopped up production elements. So I've also read that this particular song started from a very stripped down session where he was just jamming over the words, I take my whiskey neat. And this was done before, obviously, the full ambitious production was added that we know today. And I wanted to touch on that because I think it's very important the way he was able to take it down to its core and then build it up from there. Dan Stedman produced this song and did a great job. And I wanted to confer with him because even though I wanted that early Beatles and Dylan sound, I definitely wanted also to have a modern twist with it. So it could be heard in the context of today and not feel out of place. This is the only drawback of some of these early songs from Dylan, from Beatles, from the Stones, is the overall production can sound a bit dated at times, which is unfortunate because you have to overlook that, and sometimes you have to ignore that. But it can be hard to do. So I wanted to echo this intimate feel, and it was through seeking this early Dylan vibe with the modern twist that I felt that I could transform some of the quieter moments into more resonant feelings. So I started off with the chord progression. I've been spinning the same songs. It's been an hour, you haven't even said what's wrong. Coming over to a sofa and a cigarette, opened up about your friends, and you gotta say that's a hard way to fall down. So, in terms of the song inspiration, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall was definitely there. That's why with the lyrics, and that's a hard way to fall down. That's where that line comes from. And also Keith Richards' album Talk Is Cheap was a huge inspiration. That's where the lines, talk is cheap, and I've been spinning the same songs. It's been an hour, you haven't even said what's wrong. So I wanted to touch on friendship, of course love and compassion, but also put it in a context of a drive in chord progression that would serve the song, but also allow the listener to kind of, fall into this harmony, the melody that was kind of throughout. So these song inspirations are not necessarily hard or heavy, but they definitely have an acoustic element that at its core is so prominent. And in terms of power and magnitude of the sound, Keith Richards obviously being the god of the riff, I wanted to make sure that the song was a driving factor in terms of as I say, the melody, but also the 60s pop element still there. I know the Keith Richards solo album in question is in the 80s, but him being so prominent through the 60s and 70s, it's a big inspiration to me. I had Will Fleming thankfully do some electric guitar on the song, and this is weaving constantly throughout in terms of with the acoustic and the electric working together. The Stones always talked about the ancient art of weaving. Keith Richards playing with Brian Jones or Mick Taylor or Ronnie Wood, and there's this partnership and this duality throughout with the two guitars, and I always liked that. I was always also heavily inspired by that, so that's why there's an electric guitar production happening. So having a clear starting point from what I had heard and how I wanted my song and my art to be interpreted, I felt it was important to reject a massive vocal stack or layers and layers of electric guitar, as I wanted the guitars, both of them, to have a quiet leadership and the acoustic and the vocal to shine through, which would then, in my opinion, allow the song to hit harder, because all these early 60s songs didn't rely on that. A lot of some of the acoustic Stones songs, Play With Fire and all these Bob Dylan tracks, they didn't rely on these huge production elements. And for me, that was very much a relief, because it not only was it there's less to think about, but I think it allowed for everything else to shine through. And I suppose for anyone that is also making music, I think you should have a think about that, because you don't necessarily always need to have some huge electric guitar blaring through the mix. And in terms of the song's inspirations, I just wanted to keep it quite simple, because I think you can clearly do a lot with not much. Yes, if anyone wants to listen to the song, it's out on all streaming platforms, and I appreciate you guys checking out this video. I got another song called Radio Respite, which is all about the relief a listener gets from hearing the radio in hard times. So that'll be out in a week or two, and that'll be off my upcoming EP. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you soon.